Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for joining us today. We have a very interesting panel. We actually have, let's see, the largest cruise line in the world. We have the newest cruise line yet to set sail. And we have a 50-year-old expedition line that plies the waters all around the world for these many years. And all of these guests are to add to our understanding of environmentally conscious gastronomy. What I'd like to do first is introduce each one and give a little bit of background. So first, we have Lincoln Dsouza, who is VP of Food and Beverage for Royal Caribbean International. Lincoln is a 20-year food and beverage operations veteran. He started his career in Switzerland in boutique five-star hotels. After graduating from the Hotel Institute of Montreux, he returned to Dubai, working with the Jumeirah International Group. He later joined Darden Restaurants, and over a 13-year period with the Red Lobster brand, he grew to VP of Operations running Canada, the US, and Great Lakes. In 2017, he moved to Miami and joined Royal Caribbean International, leading the global culinary dining and beverage operation for the world's largest cruise line. Welcome, Lincoln.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Appreciate that. Next up, we'll go to Jill Stoneburg, who is Director of Sustainability and Social Impact for Virgin Voyages. Jill is the Director of Sustainability at Virgin Voyages. In this role, she leads the company's Changing Business for Good strategy and programs and works across the company to ensure environmental and social impacts to make them a part of their decision-making from the beginning. So you could say that Virgin Voyages is starting sustainably from the very beginning. Jill is passionate about using the power of business to solve some of the world's most pressing challenges, such as climate change, restoring ocean health, and sustainable development. Prior to Virgin Voyages, Jill held roles in corporate responsibility for high-tech companies and worked in the renewable energy field. Jill, interestingly enough and uniquely, holds an MBA in sustainable business. Welcome, Jill.
Hello, thanks for having me.
And last, but certainly not least, Anna Estevez, Director Hotel Operations for Lindblad Expeditions. Anna is an adventurer in the realm of the senses. She and I have had some talks earlier about the places we've traveled, and I want to go to the places that she's gone to. One could say she was born to do what she does. She had grandmothers on both sides who really brought her into culinary interest from a very early age from the cultures. One was from Lebanon and the other was from Venezuela, which is where Anna was born. In 2001, her family relocated to the US. At a very young age, she started cooking at a Miami restaurant owned by one of Caracas's most famous chefs. There she went from loving food to loving the food industry. After traveling and living abroad extensively, she came to Lindblad Expeditions. Anna is responsible for the quality of the food program and the galley staff aboard all of her ships. Anna's local sustainable focus extends to the beverage menu as well, as the ships now feature a wide selection of Ecuadorian artisanal beers, that's hard to say, Ecuadorian artisanal beers, produced in small batches on San Cristobal Island, making Lindblad the first cruise company to serve local craft brew. So, all of you, very interesting. I'm sure we have a lot to say about this subject from varying points of view. And I'd like to start with you, Lincoln, in a question really about the beginning of the process. Because the beginning of being conscious in this industry is how you purchase. It's purchasing the best, healthiest ingredients, making an effort to purchase locally because there's less shipping and less carbon footprint, and also about your partnerships. Now, Lincoln, you represent the largest cruise line here with over 25 ships. So you have quite the challenge. But I know that you have a partnership with the World Wildlife Fund. And I'd like to know a little bit about that as well and how that influences your purchasing, as well as, in general, about your process of consciously purchasing your food.
Yeah, no, thank you, Joyce. We have a really amazing dynamic relationship with the World Wildlife Federation, and I've had that for a few years as part of the Royal Caribbean Group. We're really focused on a few things with them, really the health of the oceans, like you said, our sustainable sourcing processes, as well as reducing emissions and reduction, as well as destination stewardship. So one of the key focuses for us within food and beverage is really working with them to identify and complete our process around ASC and MSC certification for seafood, so we can be really sustainable about how we source our seafood. Obviously, as ocean ships, we want to make sure that we're taking care of the ocean, being very responsible with the way we source our seafood. And so, as you may know, ASC and MSC certification specific to both farm raised and wild caught seafood. And so we're being really diligent in ensuring that we can focus on our supply chain and identify ways to get to a place where we have clear identification of the sources for our seafood.
Well, good. I would imagine with a younger audience, more and more younger cruisers, that they're looking for this. You know, they're looking to choose their products based on meeting some of their own personal guidelines. Are you finding?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's about the consumer, but I also think it's the right thing to do, right? So I think the consumer is looking for, but it's less about even marketing the ASC and MSC certification as much as it is about ensuring our sourcing is sustainable, that we're able to get the seafood that we're looking for our menus. And as you can imagine, serving as many meals as we do across our ships, we do have a lot of demand for the seafood. So making sure we're working with responsible suppliers is key to us ensuring that we have sustainable sourcing for a long period of time around our seafood.
I think one last thing on this particular subject is purchasing locally, which I would guess is probably you would have the biggest challenge with that among those that are on the panel today because of the volume that you purchase in. But you did mention to me when we spoke and getting prepared for this panel that you do some local purchasing in the Bahamas, something about rum, and tell us about that.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. Although we're a really big brand, we're always trying to partner with our local suppliers. As you may know, we have a wonderful island in the Bahamas at Coco Key, and we've done a lot of work with the local communities to try and source local products, whether it's beverages, as you mentioned, the rums, or even seafood for that matter. We are sourcing Bahamian lobster as well as Bahamian snapper for our beach club, which is our VIP experience on board the island, where we're able to serve locally sourced seafood to those guests who have paid additional to go into this kind of VIP experience. So irrelevant of where we sail around the world, we're always looking for opportunities to build relationships. Obviously, like you said, the volumes are key, but we do have a wide variety of restaurants that have really high volume usages as well as lower usages because of specialty or unique experiences. So we've always got that opportunity to have the flexibility to source locally, and we're always trying to build those relationships. Whenever we travel, me and my team, if we're visiting a market in which we're starting to build a relationship, we try and meet local vendors. We make really a couple of days of it. We go in and we meet with suppliers in the marketplace to just understand what's available, because we're always trying to figure out how to represent the local cultures within our menus, both from the guest experience, but also to support the local vendors and create a sustainable source for us in those places.
That's great. I'm glad you pointed that out because it's not just about providing local for your passengers, but it's really about giving people locally an opportunity to thrive in their businesses. So appreciate you mentioning that. Jill, I know that you can dive in here because you have a number of local partnerships in Miami. Virgin has made an effort to really look at small purchasing of a more variety with locals. So take it away. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so our home port is the Port of Miami for Scarlet Lady. And so we've made a very concerted effort to work with small businesses in Miami in terms of sourcing for supply on our ship. So to give a few examples, we work with Wynwood Brewery in Miami, and we've designed our own amber ale that we call Stray the Course. So really happy about that partnership. We also work with a local pizza shop. We work with a cocktail provider that has helped us curate cocktails for use on board. And we also partner with a local farm. It's an urban farm that uses sustainable farming practices, regenerative agriculture, and they're called Harpkey Family Farms. And so we source microgreens from them. So those are just a handful of examples on how we've really looked for those local stories, those local partnerships, to tell an interesting story on board and to have amazing fresh ingredients.
That's great. Well, and I know that you had a rough start because you were about to start and then COVID hit. And then you had a ship full of food. What did you do with that food?
Yeah, so like most cruise lines, we did have to do provisioning in advance, and we quickly monitored. We kept in touch with the expiration dates and monitoring of our supply. And as we neared towards expiration dates and it became apparent we weren't going to be able to use the supply that we ordered on board, we made sure that it would go to a useful place. So we donated with our provisioning partner about $100,000 worth of food supplies to the local food bank here, Feeding South Florida. So we're glad that it was able to go to good use in a time of need and support the surrounding community.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Anna, I know that you have a lot of partnerships globally because of where you cruise to, and actually I should have mentioned the size of your fleets. You have 10 primary vessels that are cruising the globe, from 47 guests to 148 guests. And before we finish with Jill, I didn't mention, and I should have, you have one vessel right now, and that's 2,022 passengers? 2,270 passengers, so in the mid-size. And you have two more coming, but they're all going to be in that mid-size. So we have a large cruise line mid-size, and now we have you, Anna, representing the small ship side. Tell us about your provisioning, how you provision for sustainability, and especially your partnerships.
For sure, yes, thank you. Yeah, so basically our food program is really based on local, sustainable, fresh, and zero waste, and we really pride ourselves on that. We provision locally. We built relationships and partnerships with all of our vendors. Our seafood is fully and thoroughly vetted prior to each season. So our ships, basically, they sail from pole to pole. We have ships in Galapagos. We have ships in Alaska, Baja California, Central America. So before each season, we do a massive sustainable seafood vetting where we go two steps further than normal. We basically ask where things are, where the seafood is coming from, how was it caught, the exact species, and in some programs we even know the name of the captain and fisherman actually pulling the fish out of the sea. So it's pretty special what we have going on with our produce as well. We've built beautiful relationships with local farmers in Costa Rica, in Galapagos, in the Falkland Islands. They grow things to spec for us. Our chefs get the opportunity to harvest with them, which really helps with that relationship building and understanding where things are coming from, right? For our food program is very much that. It's everything is very carefully thought of. We want to always know where things are coming from, how were they grown or harvested, who did it. And that's how our approach with our training as well. We want our chefs to feel proud of where the ingredients are coming from, and it's a cultural thing. So it starts from the beginning, and it's ingrained in each one of us.
Okay, I also was thinking about your tagline, or one of the taglines of Lindblad is, we turn travelers into adventurers. So are you also kind of training your passengers, to be more adventurous in their food choices because of the places that you travel to? So, you put together regional dishes when you come into different areas. I mean, is that welcomed by your adventurers? Is that sometimes looked at as, ooh, that's a little bit unusual to eat? What's that like?
We definitely like to have a connection with where we travel, and we definitely believe that whatever swims, walks, and grows in that region of the world needs to be served, right? The best way of exploring a place, it's through its food. So we're very proud of that. And our guests are very, very excited about it. They're very well educated. They want to know about these things, and they take the time to learn about it. In the entrance of each one of our dining rooms, we have what we call the food board, which we have our chef's bios posted, the menu for the day posted, as well as what we call a sustainable seafood brief and a food brief, which is basically featuring whatever we're serving that day, any nuance to them as far as a local fruit or produce. So we talk a little bit about it, how it grows, what it is. So and then we serve it, right? So there's that instant connection and education that we always talk about. Same with the seafood. If we're featuring that day a specific type of salmon in Alaska, we talk about it. So there's that connection, and the guests seem to really enjoy that, and it gets them back to understanding the region where they're traveling.
Okay, thank you. So this is a question for anyone to just jump into, because you mentioned, ordering meals, planning your meals, and that was my next thought. How do you know what your customers want to eat? Do you use technology to track preferences? How do you keep control of your stores to make sure you can control your waste? At that level, is there anything that you can tell us about that?
I'll jump in first. So we have we're blessed that we have smaller vessels with smaller storage, so we have to reprovision more often, which really helps us control waste really, really well. For dinner, we have, as I said, posted our menus, and we have a sign-up sheet. And basically every morning when guests come down to breakfast, they can see the menu for that evening, and then they take their choices. And it's kind of like a pre-order, but how it really affects us is that it helps the chef calculate how many portions of each of the featured items they're going to be serving, and really gets us really on top and in tune with how much to prepare to avoid food waste, which is a very, very powerful tool for the guest. It speaks so loudly and resonates really, really well with our guests and crew and staff.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Lincoln, I would imagine you'd have something to say about this, yes? Because of the...
I actually took a note of what Anna said. I thought that was kind of interesting. Obviously, the dynamic is a bit different with the number of guests. I would love if everybody all 6,000 people pre-selected what they were having for dinner. That would be helpful. But first going back to how we decide what food to serve to our guests. So I think one of the advantages of our organization is we've got a really in-depth research team. And so we do a lot of in-depth research on what the consumer wants. So prior to the pandemic, the 3 years prior to the pandemic, we launched 13 new concepts across our vessels. And so really identifying what the guests wanted through that research helped us identify what to put on board our ships. As it relates to managing the day-to-day processes to ensure we have the right amount of food, our team uses a combination of experience, but also we have kind of a piece of technology we use in our kitchens today that identifies, based on what's being rung in through the POS, what the culinary team has to produce in the main dining room. Obviously, we have large format buffets and other venues that require us to use production sheets based on what we know from historical usages. So a combination of some technology, a combination of really well experienced and amazing teams on board our ships. There's one thing that coming from outside of the cruise industry that I've learned about the cruise industry is that the quality of the people that you find on board cruise ships are just exceptional, and they really make our jobs a lot easier as it relates to both managing our operations in the back of the house, but also the guest experience in the front of the house and the execution of the quality of products that we deliver every single day.
Interesting. Thank you for that. And Jill, I mean, you're kind of the newbie here. I don't know that you don't have that history, to go by. But are there any things that you've done to look out at the culture of the people who are coming on board your vessels to say, we think they're going to like this?
Yeah, absolutely. There's an element of that. And as we are operational, we'll be able to track and measure which items are most popular. We also have the ability for our sailors, we call our customer sailors, to book their restaurant venue in advance. So we know approximately how many people are going to show up, and we have some rough estimates in terms of which items will be preferred over others. So as we get into operation and have been in operation for some time, we'll be able to refine our approach. But because we have no buffets on board, all of our food is made to order, and that cuts down on food waste significantly. So we aren't taking food out of storage or out of the freezer until we know that there's a need for it.
I'd like to actually just point that out, because we have viewers that may not realize that you designed the ship to never have a buffet. It's not like you did this because of COVID. You're not doing this because of anyone saying so. I mean, it was that way from the beginning. So I have another question here that I want to delve into a little bit more about how that's going to work exactly. But I'd like to actually start with Anna and ask, there's something about sort of using every single piece of the fruit, vegetable, and meat in order to really make it sustainable, so that you're not having undue waste. And I know that you have a program at Lindblad called Heads to Tail. Can you say something about that?
Sure. So our Heads to Tail approach it's a mindset, right? It's the way that we, again, train our crew and educate everybody about how to maximize the yield of a single ingredient to avoid waste. So basically everything from, the skin of the salmon, making that into crackers that can be used as a canapé with a mousse or whatever, or the vegetables and using the scraps, well, very clean so we can make stock. So we really try to utilize the majority of the vegetable to really reduce food waste. And again, we want every chef coming in to feel proud about the ingredient and to understand that there's so much hunger in the world. There's so much food going to waste that if they have that appreciation for that specific ingredient, they're automatically going to be they're going to be making the right decision into utilizing the most of it. We also, just to add to the Heads to Tail approaches, as I mentioned before, in many cases, we know captains' names for the fisher boats or the fishermen, or we harvest with the farmers. And that deep connection really makes everybody appreciate what everybody goes through to be able to provide that food to our ships. And that really, it really entices that connection and really prevents food waste as well, because everybody's kind of respectful of one another and their craft.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to go from the small to the large and ask Lincoln to talk about the cross utilization. I mean, any of us that have been on a cruise, I mean, we know that if we've had, say, a particular ingredient for breakfast, that we might see it show up as soup later on, or how that's being used, like how you utilize those elements, and also how you cross utilize your crew to be also using the best of all the food that you have.
Yeah, let me start off by saying, it's inspiring to listen to Anna share how they approach their sourcing and really leveraging the ingredients that they have. We try to do things similarly, obviously on a larger scale, down to things that we've introduced to operation, like tomato cores. It sounds like a silly example, but let me just walk you through this example for a second. When you take a tomato, if you don't core the end of the tomato, invariably a chef chops off the ends and just uses the slices or the core part of the tomato. If you use a core, you get those trimmings and you can convert those into salsas, things like that. And so, even at our operation, leveraging tools that are available in the industry to help us reduce waste of things we do. To your point earlier, as it relates to our guests and guest-facing items, we do have menu matrices and very specific items that we serve guest-facing. There's a few ingredients that we'll repurpose guest-facing, but the advantage that we have is, on board our ships, we have as many as 2,000 plus crew members on board the ship. And we feed all those crew members 3 meals plus snacks every single day. And that gives us a really great opportunity to leverage the healthy, delicious food that we use for our guests and manage that to repurpose for either crew-related food or to really serve as is to our crew, as long as we're following all of the safety standards associated with food handling.
Oh, very good. Thank you. And Jill, I know this is where to say, how do people then choose to order a la minute with you? Because Virgin is making a statement that everything will be made fresh, prepared to order. How do you do that with 2,200 passengers?
So we have over 20 eateries on board, and we believe that there's something for everyone on board, no matter if you're interested in grab and go or if you want a sit down experience. There's plenty of options on board, depending on what you're interested in, what your mood is and what you feel like. So, that's really, I think, the uniqueness about our experience on board. Just to paint a little bit of flavor, we have a steak and seafood restaurant, we have a Mexican restaurant, we have a pizza place, we have a whole area where you can go to different like kiosks essentially and order food there if you want a panini or you're looking for udon noodle soup or something like that. So there's definitely something for everyone, and people can choose where they'd like to go, and they can book the reservation in advance using our app system.
So if somebody wanted like a grab and go, you usually go to the buffet to do that. Where do they go on Virgin?
Yeah, so they'll go up to what we call the galley, and up there you have your variety of items for grab and go. You can also order food to your room through our Ship Eats program, where everything comes right directly to you.
Okay, so I imagine that that is what you're doing to help to keep the food waste down, which would be okay. You know, it wouldn't be a full program if we don't touch upon the final journey of our conscious gastronomy. And we know that another cruise line, well, mention it, Carnival Cruise Line, is piloting a project to use biodigesters on their vessels, which is a way to separate out all the little tiny, you know, plastics so that the food waste can be liquefied and moved, you know, quicker through. So is eliminating single-use plastics going to help support food waste, that we can eliminate putting that all aside and only have food waste so that it can be liquefied and dealt with as fish food or brought off as wet waste or composted? And I'd like to hear from any of you what you have to say about that. I actually think, Anna, you might, oh no, Jill, you go ahead. I think that you just unlocked.
Oh, so we had the advantage of designing our experience, you know, from scratch. And so we eliminated the use of single-use plastics from our guest-facing experience from day one. And we did a full analysis of, you know, what are the commonly used single-use plastic items that you'd find, like specifically in food and beverage. And we just did away with them, essentially. So we think that that's really the most effective step for preventing waste, you know, that's not food waste getting into the food waste stream.
Okay, great. And thank you. I think that, Anna, you mentioned something to me earlier about the wet waste and what you do with that. If you could let us know about that.
Yeah, just to second what Jill was saying, we also reduced single-use plastic guest-facing in 2017, 18, and even before then, Lindblad Expeditions have been issuing each guest with reusable water bottles in their cabins to avoid that, and multiple filling stations. So we really have been plastic free for many years now, and we truthfully believe that that's the way to go to protect the ocean and the planet. As far as our food waste goes, yeah, typically grounded up and macerated. And then, you know, in some programs where we're allowed, we do offload wet trash, and that gets back to the community so they can use as compost. So, you know, it's a kind of like a give and take kind of thing as well. So we were able to give back to those communities in that way, and then nothing really goes to waste.
Very interesting. I don't know if anyone else is doing that. I mean, that seems to be something quite unique with Lindblad. You know, Lincoln, as the large cruise line representative here, you know, this is a big issue. Tell us how you handle that and the food waste.
Yeah, across the group, we've made a commitment to, you know, really reduce and get to a point where we can potentially eliminate single-use plastics. As a group, we've reduced our single-use plastics by over 60%. As you can imagine, that's pretty significant. But especially the microplastics like straws, where we eliminated over 77 million straws a year as of 2019. So we've made a pretty huge stride since 2017 around this, and we continue to move forward. I think as we return to service, we'll see some more of that reduction. There may be some short-term impacts of COVID, but we expect to continue down that path pretty aggressively in eliminating plastics for the fleet.
Great. And I think you're also, I've actually had the, I don't know if I'd call it pleasure. Actually, it was very interesting to go deep into, you know, one of your largest vessels to see how your waste is being handled. It was extremely clean, extremely, very, very impressive. And it was impressive as to what you brought off the ship. It was impressive as to, you know, what you were able to, you know, eliminate on board through liquefying and so on. And I think that it would be, isn't that something that you allow passengers to see now or not?
Pre-pandemic, we were doing back of the house tours, and so that was definitely things that our guests were able to look at. If you did the back of the house tours, I don't believe we're currently going to be doing them as we return to service, at least in the short term. But I'm sure at some point we'll get back to it for sure.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Good. So You represent, each of you, varied cruise brands, and I'm sure that you each have your own individual challenges, maybe your own individual opportunities, things that you could see, for the future. As we're about to head into the question and answer session, which is going to be, we're about 4 minutes away from that. I'd just like to know about your particular challenge and what you see as future opportunities.
I can chime in. So we've looked at how to source our ingredients the most sustainably as possible. And it's been a challenge for us to find things like humane certified products in the quantity that we need. So we're starting, with cage-free eggs, but we'd like to move to humane certified meat, and we're looking at, how do we reduce the use of palm oil in our supply chain? How do we source fair trade ingredients like coffee and sugar and tea? So sometimes just the scale of what we need is one of the biggest challenges. I think that will change over time, because I think people really do want to connect with their food. They're interested in this farm to table movement. They want to know where their food is coming from, how it's grown, who grew it. And we have some really interesting stories on board, with some coffee that we serve and the tea that we serve, and where some of our products come from, like Harpkey Farms, and some of the drinks that we serve, and the vineyards that we work with. But it is a challenge in terms of scale.
Mm-hmm. Totally understood.
That's great. And I think before I answer our challenges, I'd like to really echo the fact that all three cruise lines are here at different sizes, and all of this awareness that we're creating for the industry and the consumer, it's amazing, right? We're working as one to create this sustainability awareness, which is so important. We need to start educating the future generations as well. So, it's amazing what you guys are doing. For us, I think one of the biggest challenges, our sustainable seafood policies are so strict that sometimes we're limited in the amount of seafood that we can serve, because we're so deeply rooted into what we can and we cannot serve. As an example, Lindblad Expeditions hasn't served shrimp in over 20 years. Back then, we didn't feel that there was sustainable shrimp out there. There was issues with mangroves and everything. So we decided it was a bold decision to make, but we know it was compelling and the right way forward. And likewise, because we monitor seafood so closely and we go through this extensive research every season, we've had to stop the use of specific species. Let's say in Alaska, we had to stop king salmon for a couple of years because the stock levels were declining dramatically. And we knew the right thing to do was to wait until we could see that those stock levels kind of replenish. We would still be serving different species in Alaska, delicious salmon, but we had to really just kind of take a little break from that until we felt that it was the right time to bring it back. So I think that's one of our challenges, but I think all in all, it's a good compromise because we know we're doing the right thing for the ocean.
Thank you. Also, I didn't mention your connection to National Geographic, which is a very important aspect of it. And I've been on one of your cruises with Dr. Sylvia Earle, and actually after being with her, I gave up tuna a couple of years ago when I was with her. And, because she is an advocate of, we are fishing out the tuna in the world, and that is not farmable. Those fish need to fly, and they can't be brought up on a farm. So once they're gone, they're gone. And it was hard because I always loved that particular fish, and I don't eat meat. So that was but right. It's sometimes you got to do what you got to do in order to at least try to make a difference somewhere.
Definitely. And then turn it around a little bit too, like trying to create more delicious vegan options, right? So people can then gravitate, and instead of eating seafood and meat, on a 7-day voyage, all 7 days, they can find really delicious and healthy vegan options. So they take a break from that. So it's all a game and staying on top of it.
Yeah, thank you. And how about you, Lincoln, your challenge?
Yeah, let me start with the vegan menu. In 2019, Joyce, you'd be happy to hear we launched a vegan menu on board our main dining room. So that's accessible for all of our guests sailing with us on any of our ships across the fleet. But in addition to the ASC and MSC certification that we're doing around seafood, we are focused on a couple of the key priorities associated with sustainable sourcing and animal welfare, specifically gestation-free pork, focus on 100% cage-free eggs, broiler-free broiler chickens with GAP certification. So those are some of the things we're focused on. Similar to what Jill said, part of the issue is the supply chain and the ability to source these in the volumes that we use. So we continue to work with suppliers to figure out how to close those gaps and source more effectively. As an organization, we continue to focus on our food waste opportunities and how to close the gaps as well. So I think those are kind of some of the key highlights that we're focused on. And we continue to work with our suppliers and partners to set targets and focus on how we deliver them.
And I think another challenge too is your first cruising is going to be in Israel this year. So, and coming up with kosher food and being able to supply to that audience is going to be
it's been a really interesting dynamic. We have done a couple of kosher kind of charter style cruises here in the U.S., but it's much smaller groups and in a very consistent environment where we're going to Israel, first time in Haifa. We're excited about it. We've done a lot of work to create good options for both kosher and non-kosher. So we're really excited about that. Excited to start in June. I think the Israeli population is super excited about us being in the market as well. So glad to be there.
That's great. Thank you. So we are at questions and answers. First of all, I want to thank all three of you for just the sharing, the opportunity that you've given us to hear. And I think also hearing from each other, that's something that you can have as a takeaway. I'm sure there were some good ideas passed along here. So audience question, let's see. Have you ever had a really exciting surprise or opportunity come from sourcing locally, finding something you haven't seen before? Or an experience you haven't had before from sourcing locally?
I'll maybe start in the Bahamas right now. Really interestingly, last week I heard from our supply chain team that we were able to identify a potential source for lionfish. As many may know, lionfish is not a fun species to have around. They're very invasive, and so we're working to see if there's an opportunity to, and unfortunately it can't be line caught or net caught. So we're working with to see if we can get a sourcing through divers that spearfish for it. So that might be an interesting opportunity for us in the Bahamas. Obviously the volumes may be a little challenging, but like I said, I think we'll have opportunities to use it. So I think in any market that we can find unique species or things that help with sustainability and that the locals are able to help us find, I think that's always a good opportunity.
Very good. And I think, Anna, you mentioned that you were working with lionfish too, yes?
Yeah, this dates back to 3 years ago, pre-pandemic, and 3 years ago, we again, our sustainable seafood program has always been so strict and bold that we're also trying to look at sustainability in a different way. So the opposite to stop serving something is how do we solve the problem in the different way? So we've been looking for lionfish, but as Lincoln mentioned, there's some challenges with that, with the supply chain of it all. But if we could all manage to get it and start removing those beautiful little fish from the ocean and put it on people's plates, because they are also delicious, would be a win-win situation for everybody.
That's great. Jill, I know that you haven't started operating yet, so if you had anything probably to add to that, or?
Not in terms of a surprise with sourcing locally. I think that there's more that we want to do. And so it's really just navigating in terms of where can we have a really interesting story and bring fresh ingredients on board in the places where we sail, even as we look outside of Miami.
Okay, great. Thank you. Another question here. Do you feel that do you see that your passengers are requesting these things these days, that they're becoming more sustainable themselves, that they're questioning things like single-use plastics or asking for sustainable options? Do you see that? I mean, Lincoln, you do an awful lot of research and surveys on your passengers. Are you seeing more of that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a percentage of guests who have interest in where their food comes from, and that continues to grow. I would say definitely more with our millennial guest base. They're really more focused on the details of sourcing. But I do think everybody generally wants to know now more than ever where their food comes from. And so we do our best to inform our guests when we're aboard through our menus and so forth. but I don't know if I've answered the question quite all the way. But yeah, we do try our best to provide as much information as possible for our guests, and then our teams on board the ships. If a guest has a real specific question, we can get additional details for any of our guests.
Okay. And Anna, you've been in business the longest here, I think, over 50 years. So, are your passengers very engaged in this process with you?
Very much so, Joyce. Our guests are extremely engaged with everything that happens on the ships and every decision. They're very well-educated guests, as I mentioned before, and they're genuinely interested in everything that we do. And because of our small-size ship setup, there's so much interaction between our captains, hotel managers, chefs, with the guest. It's not unlikely that our guests would be questioning things, like Jill mentioned something about palm oil. We're all trying to not have things with palm oil, but it's in a lot of foods, and it's not uncommon for a guest to just be looking at a label saying, hey, there's palm oil here, how so? And that feedback is important. It helps us with better choices in the future, or demanding more of our suppliers to come up with solutions that are equally delicious and great and more mainstream than that don't contain those ingredients. But yeah, I guess we're very much engaged with food and where it's coming from, and if it's sustainable or not.
That's great. And Jill, to me, it feels like when I see your marketing that you are actually marketing to this audience. You are marketing to those people who are conscious and who are looking at their travel options, looking at them very carefully to try to make sure that they're aligned with their values.
Yeah, we did a lot of research at the beginning, and we know that our target customer does really care about these things. And are interested in trying new things. So one thing that I didn't mention, in addition to responsible sourcing and a commitment to sustainable fish and seafood, is that we have a restaurant that's very vegetarian forward called Razzle Dazzle. And there you'll have an opportunity to try things like the Impossible Burger, or fish that isn't really fish but tastes like fish. And so there you have a unique kind of fun opportunity to try things that are a little bit different.
And not give up what you feel needs to be delicious at the same time.
That's right.
That's great. Because that's really what this is all about. I mean, conscious is about being aware, and gastronomy is about good food. So we have to mirror both of those, combine both of those together in order to accomplish this, and really, help to bring awareness. So we're coming to the close of our time together. I just want to quickly ask anything that anyone's doing exciting for Earth Day next week that you want to share?
I could share. So we have a couple of things that we're doing with our crew in Miami. We're doing a plog crawl, which plogging is a term that was coined in Sweden, where you run and you pick up trash. And so we have a focus on wellness, and we're doing a run to these various small businesses that we work with in Miami. And on the way to experience their food, we're going to do a run and pick up trash. So that's one event. And then another event is we're doing a volunteer event with our farm partner, our Harpkey family farms.
Going up to work the ground?
Yeah,
are you?
Get our hands dirty. Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Good. If you need any volunteers.
Come join us, more than merrier.
Let's see, and Lincoln, Anna, any quick Earth Day note?
Yeah, our chairman, Richard Fain, has actually issued a day off for the organization, so that everybody in the organization has an opportunity to contribute to their local communities, and has asked that we all look for opportunities to give back within our own communities, which is pretty impressive, I think. So we're all excited about finding opportunities within our local communities to give back.
Good. Sounds like a plug might be in order for you too, as a group. I love that idea. And Anna?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things in the works, and something that I can actually share today, and stay tuned on our social. We're really honoring, celebrating, and amplifying what people are doing for the planet, and not just on Earth Day, but in general. So it's a broader way of looking at it. For us, Earth Day, it's essentially every day. So we're really going to be honoring and celebrating those people that do it for on a daily basis.
That's great. Well, clearly, all three of you have a drive in that direction. So that's amazing because, I think in the industry, it's going to come from the inside out as well as the outside in. So we all in the cruise industry will be educating the travelers, and the travelers will be helping us to understand more about what we can do and what we can offer. So, I would like to thank you all for being here, for taking the time. I know with you, Anna, very early in the morning. You're on the west coast of the U.S. Lincoln and Jill, we're all on the East Coast here, so we're okay. And also thank our viewers for tuning in at a time when it's also very early for you all as well. So thank you very much for everything.